everyone! I'm here to tell you about the surgery I had done at age 23, the bilateral salpingectomy. I actually had it 2 weeks ago. This is a procedure where they remove the fallopian tubes so that you can't have children. Ever! Isn't that great? No babies for me. This is going to be a two-part video. In this part, the first part, I'm going to be talking about 1, why I got sterilized, 2, why I got sterilized so young, 3, how I found a doctor willing to do the procedure, and 4, why I decided to do the bilateral salpingectomy and not a different procedure. And then in part 2 of this video, I'm going to be talking about what the procedure was actually like and what I went through. You can find the links for that in the description, and I'm going to have timestamps for all of those. So, first off, why did I decide to get sterilized? Well, because I don't want kids. That's the only reason you really need. I mean, why would I want to inflict life on more human beings and bring them into the world just to suffer? But that's a topic for another video. There are other reasons. Before I got sterilized, I had a copper IUD for 6 years, from 2014 to 2020. I like the copper IUD because I didn't have to swallow any pills, which is difficult for me. I also didn't have to reinstate my birth control in any way. I didn't have to reapply any patches or redo any shots. It was just there all the time. I didn't have to remember it. I didn't have to worry about forgetting my birth control or having it fail on me. And I wasn't too keen on hormonal birth control options because there's a study that says that it affects women's ability to sniff out a partner, and scent is something that's really important to me, so I didn't want to mess around with that. And on top of that, the copper IUD lasts the longest out of any temporary birth control option. Depending on who you ask, it can last up to 12 years. So why was I so dissatisfied with the copper IUD that I decided to switch methods? Well, for one thing, I don't like having foreign objects in my body. My body had a visceral reaction to it. I walked out of Planned Parenthood when I was 17 and I just had the IUD inserted, and then I ran back inside to barf in the toilet. That's the kind of reaction my body had to this thing, and that began half a decade of my body battling to get this thing out of me. During those 6 long years that device sat in my uterus, my periods were twice as long and twice as painful. They went from 3 days of bleeding with almost non-existent cramps to 7 days of bleeding with cramping all around the clock. I cramped all through my cycle. When I was bleeding, when I was ovulating, when I was emotional. I would spend entire days in bed just because the cramping was so bad. I missed my mild little periods. I was spending a third of my life bleeding, 7 days being unbothered by my uterus, 7 days of cramps, and 7 days of bleeding, over and over and over. And the worst part is, I wasn't even having that much sex that I would justify having a birth control method like this. For the last 5 years, I've been sexually active maybe 1 month out of that. So why was I going through all of this trouble? So given the downsides of other forms of birth control, sterilization just seemed like the natural choice. You don't have to renew it, it's permanent, it's not going to hurt you, there's no foreign objects in your body. It sounds like a dream come true. It's basically as close to nature's birth control as you can get. On top of that, you can leave it to me and my anxiety to think up the most bizarre situations where it might come in handy to be sterilized. For example, what if I get stuck on an island or in the woods for 10 years and I don't have a doctor to remove my IUD and put a new one in? What if I were to end up with an abusive person who pulled my IUD out by yanking on the strings? What if this country and all the countries around the world decided collectively to deny birth control to women so that I wouldn't have access to a replacement IUD? These things are improbable, but not impossible. But, you ask, why would you want to do this procedure at such a young age? You're only 23. Well, the surprising thing is that I didn't do it sooner. Ever since I was a little girl, I didn't want to have any kids. In fact, I wanted to be sterilized before I even became sexually active for the first time. Would have been a dream come true for me. So paranoid was I that I thought I should be using 2 forms of birth control at any one time just to make extra sure I don't get pregnant. I didn't really do that, but you can see the picture that I'm painting of my child-free fervor. I thought of all the years I suffered because of my IUD and all the years I would suffer in the future if I had to continue using it. I decided that even if the critics were right and I did change my mind, I didn't want to go through all that pain just for a what if. If I want the procedure, why not do it now? I knew that if I didn't do it now, I would be thinking of it all the way through menopause. Why not put the issue to rest once and for all? Another reason I had this done so young is because I have state-provided health insurance, Medicaid, and I don't know how long it's going to last. I could easily rocket above the income limit, or the government can snuff out those benefits and I'll no longer have access to this procedure. Why wait and potentially have to pay out of pocket for this procedure when I can just do it now and have it done for free? One last little reason I decided to get sterilized is sort of to be a role model to others. I've heard the stories of women trying to get sterilized and being told they have to wait until their 30s or have several children before doctors are willing to do the procedure on them. And because of these stories, I decided to start the process really young because I thought it was going to be a really long battle. Turns out it wasn't. The youngest you can get this procedure in my state is 21 years old, so I started at age 20. And it turned out I didn't have to wait that long. So how did I find a doctor willing to perform the procedure? It was a surprisingly easy process. While the medical professionals I met with expressed concern over my decision, they ultimately agreed that it was my own personal choice. The sexual health clinic I was assigned to had the most wonderful provider that I picked out myself. She was kind and warm and made me feel comfortable in her presence. I was really looking forward to having her do my procedure. She did express concern at doing the procedure, knowing that I suffer from depression, so she asked that I get help with that so that she would feel more comfortable. So I did. And I waited. I waited for school to be over. I waited for the perfect opportunity when I was 100% sure that this was what I wanted. And before I knew it, she had transferred clinics. And my lovely provider was no longer here. I was sad to see her go, but happy that she's taking care of herself. Thankfully, I was able to find another doctor willing to do the procedure on my first try again. So not just once, but twice I found a willing provider, and I attribute this to living in a place that's very liberal, left-leaning, feminist, free choice kind of place. My thanks go out to all the doctors who provide me and all women with a choice. So why did I decide to go with the bilateral salpingectomy procedure? There's a few options for permanent sterilization for women or people with uteruses. They're bilateral salpingectomy, tubal ligation, and Essure. Presented with all these choices, I decided to rule out Essure since the other two are very similar. Essure is a fairly new procedure where metal coils are inserted into the fallopian tubes to create scar tissue, and that scar tissue prevents eggs from traveling down the tubes. Unfortunately, most of the data is new and short-term, so there's not a whole lot known about the long-term risks of this procedure. Given that, and my aversion to having foreign objects inside my body, I decided to rule this procedure out. So then, it was between the tubal ligation and the bilateral salpingectomy. It wasn't even really a contest, though. My doctor recommended the bilateral salpingectomy. It's the one that's done more routinely nowadays because removing the tubes reduces the risk of ovarian cancer and the risk of relapse. I knew that if I got sterilized, the bilateral salpingectomy was the one that I wanted. So now that you know why I decided to get sterilized, why I got sterilized at such a young age, how I found a doctor willing to do the procedure, and why I decided to go with the bilateral salpingectomy. In the next video, I'm going to talk about what the procedure was actually like, how the surgery went, what sort of things went down. Check out the link in the description to check out part 2. Okay, I think you get the message.